Hello, hope you're doing well. I wanted to do a video about a topic where I wasn't just rambling about some abstract thing. I've always been interested in schooling and how the system is outdated. I didn't know exactly where to start though, so I dove headfirst onto Google. The first article I ended up finding was pretty good and is the one I wanted to hone in on today. It was called "The Problem Is Not Teaching to the Test, the Problem Is the Test" by Addison Mail. Going into the article, I thought I would find myself disagreeing with it. I've long thought that teaching to test in schools was a waste of time. Most students end up forgetting 95% of what they've quote unquote learned, or especially nowadays with online tests, students just cheat on everything. Cheating was always prevalent, but it was surely harder to do inside a classroom with a proctor. I'm more referring to college, as I've witnessed pre-COVID college and post-COVID college, so I've experienced both. I'm about 7 years removed from high school, so I have no clue what they do anymore. Pre-COVID, there were some online things, but nowhere near as much compared to now. For example, this past semester, 4 out of the 5 finals that I took were online and I could take them wherever I wanted to. I had to use some stupid lockdown browser thing with a webcam on one of 4 of those, but at that point, why not just do it in person? If it's to stop cheating, well, I have bad news for whoever that professor was. It's certainly not that difficult to do, not that I would know, of course. If you're going to stalk me on my screen while I take my test, is it that much harder to do it in the classroom? That's besides the point though. I never thought of a great solution to the problem I believe exists. The way tests are given heavily incentivizes just memorizing facts or equations. Every once in a while, you'll get a test that requires logical thinking or actually making sure you understand the material. These types of tests are certainly better than the former since they require you to actually think of a solution. This is not to say that you shouldn't have to memorize anything. If you want to be a doctor, I would prefer it if you didn't have to Google the names of organs or bones I'm having an issue with. So I'm not exactly sure what to do though in order to fix this problem. Is it a problem in the first place? Let me refer back to that article. Here's the first sentence. Teaching to the test is exactly what we should be doing in literally every discipline known to education and beyond. Well, shit, I guess we do disagree. But hold on, let me keep reading this paragraph. The root of the problem is almost always found with the test and not our desire to teach to the test. If the test for which we have geared our teaching and learning is correctly calibrated to the skills and knowledge that are needed for competence in a real-world setting, then teaching to the test is what we should do. And if what we are testing isn't what students need to learn, then why are we testing? This is why you shouldn't jump to conclusions. We do agree that pointless tests are bad. Something I didn't really bother thinking about though were good tests, ones that actually correlate with things you use in the real world, like the bar exam to become a lawyer or the MCATs to get into medical school. Not all tests are created equally, nor should they be. There can be a test for literally anything. The question I have with this is how is it decided what students need to learn? It depends on the industry, the class, what you're expected to know, the problems you're trying to solve. If I was trying to become an engineer, how useful is passing a physics test? Sure, I can make sure I know the equations to memorize specific things that are on the test, but just because I do that doesn't mean I'm able to apply that physics knowledge anywhere in the real world. Not all knowledge is meant to have applications. Some knowledge is imparted on students just to make sure they have the ability to comprehend other topics. I think this is a valid argument for testing, and the article agrees. Exams were never meant to be some part of an elaborate checklist of things a student had to do in order to earn a particular grade, letters after their name, or certificate. They were purely meant to show that one possessed the knowledge and the skill required to do the job, complete a task, etc. Tests themselves were originally ways to showcase your abilities to ensure employers or customers that you were the real deal. This makes sense, a ticket of certification. And prior to recent times, these certificates held high regard. This recognition is extremely important for everyone. Our society is built on trust, that we will repay our debts, that we will not kill, that we will take care of our neighbors, that we will not steal or lie, etc., etc. Just be a good person. This is impossible to simulate 100% of course, since there's always bad apples, and unless we had turned our society into Orwellian state, this will never happen. Therefore, tests are needed to reassure the trust that the person knows what they are doing. If I needed a plumber, I would prefer someone who has years of experience and is able to prove it. They don't necessarily need a license, though that would be nice. They just need to have a track record of good work. Proving that is difficult though. Anyone can claim that they are some expert plumber. Do I want some random person from Craigslist replacing my fill valve in my toilet? It depends on how badly I need the job done, but probably not. If he was a certified, self-employed plumber with a business and millions of reviews, then of course I would hire him. But that's only if he could prove it other than just words. Even with all those reviews, especially with AI nowadays, I mean, you can easily fake that shit. When thinking of modern day testing, you probably think of some algebra exam or a history test on World War II in school, both of which of those don't really teach anything meaningful in most cases. Like I mentioned earlier, something like the bar or the MCATs are important in weeding out students and getting the best ones. I'm perfectly okay with these. I just can't stand that a lot of jobs require degrees to get that job, especially when what you learn in college ends up being almost completely useless in your field. There's an argument that a college degree is also a way of weeding people out and making sure that young adults that graduate are ready to get a job. To that, I call bullshit. A college degree is extremely watered down since 61.4% of recent high school graduates were enrolled in college in 2023. Especially now with AI and cheating running rampant, a general college degree is worth less than it ever has been before. And I'm not trying to get political here, but DEI also has to be mentioned. Here's what the article said about that. Somehow, we've gone from using tests for the noble purposes of ensuring the right knowledge and skills and leveling the playing field for all people to the travesty that testing has become today. Today, we have become convinced that the problem is actually the notion of testing at all. People are grading tests on a curve based on people's childhood, how poorly that group of students did, whether or not the students felt oppressed, and so on. Rather than passing these exams via merit, they are passing the exams as some kind of extension of whatever their victimized narrative is. I don't think it's controversial to question the ethicality of modern practices regarding DEI. I'm a white straight male, so I'm the lowest on the social totem pole. Things seem to be changing recently, but I've long thought that these practices of DEI will not work in the long run, and I would make the argument that it's done the opposite of what it was intending to do. It has caused more people to actually question women or people of color doing jobs, since they could have been hired to fill a quota rather than just on merit. I'm not saying these people do not have adequate skills or anything like that. I think it's a good practice to hire the best Americans to fill jobs no matter their profile. Casting a wider net will yield a bigger and better fish. But even the notion that they may hire certain people because of anything other than merit diminishes the whole point of DEI. Regarding the quote, I'm not sure if people are passing classes because of these things. I have serious doubts about that. What I do not have doubts about, though, is that there are certainly people who get admitted into colleges or even jobs that they shouldn't have. If they have been white or Asian, they probably would have been glossed over. Through this phenomena, it's just another blow to the credibility of a college degree. And as if this wasn't all bad enough, many of the exams that academia still takes seriously teach nonsense that does literally nothing for the people supposedly learning to take them. They are increasingly becoming useless hurdles that don't test anything the student needs to know. We increasingly test for knowledge that doesn't make any sense. When dental students have to take anatomy courses where they are required to learn all the bones in the feet, if your dentist is working on your feet, then our problem is too few podiatrists, not poorly trained dentists. This is where my largest problem with college and how it's taught comes in. I'm going to school currently for a business degree. So tell me why when I transferred in, I had to take an art class, a science class, and a history class. I would have no problems with this if the schooling wasn't so fucking expensive. But since it is expensive, it makes me think this is all just a big scam. It's ridiculous. This then brings me back to the point I made earlier where most students forget almost all that they have learned anyway. When a graduate gets a job, they learn what they need to know about that job through the experience and trial and error. Failing is actually encouraged, since failing is the best teacher, assuming you actually learn from them. The article's final point about testing is this. The ability to correctly model concrete knowledge and skills isn't through abstract memorization. It's through concrete applications, repetitions, and iterations. Mimic or just fully immerse the student in whatever environment they will have to recall and apply the knowledge in, and the validity of the test skyrockets. The more realistic it is to whatever conditions they will need said knowledge and skills for, the better. This is how I've felt for years now. Ever since first getting into college, really. The current way tests are given is way outdated with our current technology at our disposal. The best way to test and get students prepared is for them to experience whatever they plan on learning or doing. I learned more about business working at a small tire shop for a couple years than I have any sort of classwork or reading. I've also learned more about investing by actually buying stocks and looking at balance sheets and cash flow and income statements. Losing money definitely helped me learn, but that's another story for another day. Being well versed by reading books is a good thing, but there's a difference between reading a book and actually using the knowledge from that book in a meaningful way. If you want to accomplish something in life, you just have to do it. You can't be stuck in the planning phase forever, as that will yield zero results. This is the same concept that applies to schooling. You can't just forever learn how to take tests. That will do you no good whatsoever in the real world. This is not to say that you should never plan or never learn, but there needs to be a second step in that. The article didn't go much into standardized testing in grade school. It touched upon the SATs a little bit, but nothing substantial. I will make a video dedicated to that at a later date, but these tests are the biggest culprit of fucking students over, since the incentive for teachers and schools is to have their students do well on these tests. Throughout the school year, they waste kids' time teaching them bullshit test-taking skills or topics that have no real substance. This time could be much better suited doing other activities. To this day, I will always remember my 4th grade teacher, Mr. Mans, who was a hard ass to most, would always have these class competitions. Specifically, he would split the class into 2 teams and host spelling bees. These spelling bees were some of the most cherished schooling moments I've ever had. It had no bearing on anything important, especially now with spell check, but it was the most fun activity I've taken in school and helped curate a passion for learning. Teaching to the test is a good thing in certain cases, but the way our schooling system is currently set up, I think it's a mistake and something needs to change. All it is good for right now is killing kids' passion for learning and doesn't really test anything worthwhile. I could keep rambling, but I will end it here with one last quote, since Addison sums it up much better than myself. Setting the correct standards with the right incentives typically drives humanity to find a way to succeed using our superpower, the skill of learning. Using human ingenuity, we will tend to find a way to learn all the knowledge and skills that can be employed in the necessary conditions. This is, always has been, and always will be how we learn. Thanks for watching, and make sure to check out the other great articles Addison wrote. I linked them below. Have a great day.